Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Heidi Little and I am here with Nokomis grandmother Shannon CrossBear, and we are with International Children's Month, and this year is International Children Love the Miracle. And this is part one of a series of videos we're going to do, hopefully, God willing, on our children. And we would like to start with the miracles of babies and birth and whatever else Shannon would like to address with us today. Shannon, welcome.
Thanks. So, yeah, I just want to introduce myself to everybody. My name is Shannon CrossBear. My English name is Shannon CrossBear. Nikishnika Wababonese. Dodam Mabwa. That's my active name. And I want to, in my plan, and I want to just, welcome everybody today, and also to just talk about kind of this time that we're in of change and miracles. We're in the middle of a miracle, and I kind of wrote a few years back that being in the middle of the miracle can be messy. It's not always going to be great. And if all we have to do is look at birth and see that, right? That there's labor, right? There's pain, there's that kind of thing. But there's also such great joy. And so when we think about us as human beings, as we come to be on this earth walk, that's one of the places that Heidi and I wanted to start to talk about for this series, because we're in the middle of this miracle. And what this miracle means is that we may be doing things differently in the future. And now is the time to really have these conversations to say, how can we do it better than we did it yesterday? And what are the lessons that we can learn from different indigenous practices that have been here since the beginning of time that help tell us even about how we bring children into this world? So I think about, when I think about that, I think about one of the early ceremonies that happens before a child is born. And that's the welcoming in the womb ceremony. And what that ceremony is really about is all kinds of things that we know that are good. That's like, hey, once you find out that you're going to have a child, then you gather the people that care about you around you to welcome that child in the womb on its journey to its birthing. And what that means is giving the good intentions to that mother, and also a commitment that you're making to protect her. So that might mean protecting her from, at one time it meant from, any kinds of hurts, but emotional pains and grief and those kinds of things. But it also meant, now keeping her away from drugs and alcohol that could possibly harm her child. Making sure she has good nutrition. Making sure that her heart and her spirit are in a good place. Taking good care of her and surrounding her with that. And you think about what that does for the womb, for the mother, for where this child is coming in, and the support that can happen. And that child is ready to be here. You're saying, come, be with us, and we'll do everything you can from this moment on, from this moment until you are birthed into this physical world to support your arrival in safety. And so, I'm just asking, how would the world look different if we started to embrace such things and to actually make that part of our social contract with each other in a new story, in a new world, in a new time, based on those things that are really, really of great value and teachings from people around. So I think about that specifically around even pre-birth. And then once the birth takes place, once the welcoming, who is this new young being in the world? And what are our responsibilities, but also our joys? And what is the role that they might potentially play in maintaining, sustaining, healing the sacred of humanity. And so, you know, that child is cared for. And between the time that that child comes on this earth and that soft spot in their head closes up, they say that is the most precious, precious sacred time. And it's precious and it's sacred because they're still deciding whether they want to stay here or not. They're connected to the spirit world with that opening, that soft part of their skull that isn't complete. You know, we think about those things, we know about them from Western medicine and what they've taught us about, you know, that soft spot on the top of their head if you happen to be a parent or have been around babies, and, you know, how you have to be careful until it closes up, and, you know, and all of that is true. That's true on a physical level, but it's also true on an emotional level and a spiritual level. So when we think about truth, we always have to remember when something is true, it has to be true on all those levels in order to really hold its truth. So it has to be true on a physical level, on a mental level, on an emotional level, on a spiritual level. And so just if you ever want to know if something's true, ask yourself about those levels and say, those levels not even the right word. Sometimes English words are a challenge. But that area, that part of the circle, your own inner circle of humanity. So once the child is there, then again, like I said, who is this being that we were gifted? You know, and it was the elders that had an opportunity to then pray about that, think about that, allow spirit to be gifted, to gift them with this child's name. It wasn't, you know, we've got great names. I mean, there's some, I just met a young lady today, and her name is Dolo, and I hadn't heard that name before, and but it was short for her grandmother's name, which was Dolores. And so names, we know that names have meaning. So this idea of naming is not a simple thing. It's important to do for our children. And so yes, you know, you want to honor that relative, or, you know, I guess it's become that relative of that movie star or that current name. But think deeper about that. That's a name that you give them, that you know, you like, or maybe it has some meaning to it, but go deeper. What is the name that will help to guide that individual throughout their life? What is the name that the elders would give that child who have seen some things and have or those that are given that gift to really be able to deliver a name in such a way, a name that can be so powerful that it guides you for the rest of your life. I feel like the name that I have, my Ojibwe name, I feel like it guides my life, and I learn from it every single day. And I've been given some additional names, you know, both in Ojibwe and Lakota. But it's that name that I first was given that carries me through. Those others augment and have their own stories. Sometimes I just carry them for a little while and then pass them on. But that this idea of naming is really can be so powerful because, like I said, it's the guide for an individual, and they can look at their name. And it's also the way that we talk about it many times is that it's it's your name to be used. It's the name by which the ancestors and the Creator know. And so, especially if you're in times of being in conversation with your ancestors or the Creator, the Spirit that moves through all things, then that you want them to recognize you through that name. So even you can see, even in the very beginning of life, it's important for people to start to establish purpose and to know that they have a purpose for their earth walk, because every individual that is born has purpose. And so, and sometimes that purpose gets fulfilled in a very short period of time, and sometimes it's over what we would now consider a lifetime. They say that long ago, I heard stories about that we think that we live a long time now. But in the days before, when we were more in harmony with everything, that we actually lived what would be comparable to 7 generations. So that's a long time. And so
Can you say that one more time? I kind of got lost a little bit. Can you just repeat yourself there? I want to make sure everybody can hear you. Speak up.
Sure. What
up.
I said, yeah, okay. What I said was that some of the stories that we think that life is, the life that we live is a long life, and it's important to start with our purpose. And so at the very beginnings of our lifetime, we are already embedding our sense of purpose, our sense of responsibility, our sense of where we belong in the sacred group of humanity. And so, and then I stopped and said, we think that we live a long time now, but the reality is, at least from what I've heard, the stories that I've heard that there was a time when we lived 7 generations. We talk about making decisions as they will affect the next 7 generations, but we actually lived 7 generations.
That's a really long time.
On our earth walk, right? They talked about it in terms of the mountains in your life, the things.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Oh, I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, and I cannot speak deeply to that.
Yeah.
But it was information that resonated with me because it resonated with me that's what we think is a long lifetime now is not a long lifetime. It's only the first hill, right? So the first hill of the lifetime. So that naming is an important thing. That's the other thing I would say in when a child is still baby, right? And then we know there were things that we've done, and we're kind of understanding that more from the Western stuff with social emotional learning and talking about it in that way. But all of that is so important. It really is. It's about, how do you show and demonstrate and participate so that you can help a child self-regulate, for example. Help a child at, and again, it's a language. Some people would say it like that. They would say self-regulate. Other people would say self-soothe. Other people would say, grounding themselves, right? Teaching your children to you're young, even at a young age of a small child, of a baby. And what do we know about babies? I mean, what do we know about babies? All we have to do, we're human beings, right? That need to be comforted and cared for and, and demonstrated to and, all of those things. And I think we're especially challenged at this point in time in 2020 when we're thinking about how do we give a baby everything that it needs, right? And how important it is, how important touch is in a time where we're living in where people are limiting their touch, their physical touch. And what we know results if you don't have physical touch. So this is affecting all of us at this point in time. So it becomes even more important to be conscious of that touch, to be able to begin to communicate at the very earliest times after the child has arrived out of the womb. And so we know things like how important breastfeeding is for the nutrients, right, of that rich source of food. and how important that is because of the touch, right? That sacredness, again, that child, that mother, that sacredness, that bonding with that father as well. All of that is happening, and it all happens. So just helping people to be conscious of how do we help our to care, love, and respect our children going forward, and what is the miracle? The miracle is we can do it. The miracle is it's already been done. And the miracle is we have all of this information and all of this support to help us be able to help our babies, right? To help our mothers and our children and our sons and our daughters and our future generations. It's just, I love Dr. D. Bigfoot, who is Dolores Bigfoot. She's from Oklahoma. Works with the National Child Native American Trauma Center. And she, they produced this little postcard a few years ago. And it was so powerful because we often think to ourselves, what can I do? What can I do? You know, what can I do? And on this postcard, it tells you exactly what you can do as a parent. And there's only 4 things. It only says 4 things, right? I can feed my child food and their spirits every single day, right? I can call my child by name. That kind of goes back to that naming. Who are they, right? They belong. I can read or tell a story to my child every day. And I can allow my child to hear me petition or pray on their behalf every day. And if you do those 4 things, you're going to raise healthy, happy children in the world, right? They will be cared for. They will be loved. They will be respected. And so when I think about what do we do for babies, we do that. We do that, and we do what we do for babies, we have to do for their mothers and their families, right? And their fathers. We have to protect their mothers, protect their fathers to be able to do what they need to do. We need to hold that, that up because, in the community, one of the communities that I lived in, it was such a great thing because I'll tell you, when I was a young mother, if it wasn't for Granny Auntie, there were a number of things that could have gone very wrong very fast, right? But the Granny Aunties, the aunties and the grannies and those that would come in and help the young mothers, and sometimes that help was, telling them how to get the milk to stop flowing when, when your baby was already full, or it could be how to soothe your baby in a way that allowed you some rest that was needed, right? And sometimes it meant taking over, and sometimes it meant cooking a meal, and sometimes the point was that people will tell you what they need and then you respond, right? That's how we take care of each other, and that's how we take care of the baby. There was a program a while back that was really attempting to do good things for healthy babies, and it was a great program called Brighter Futures. I think they're still doing great work. But early on, there was a disagreement between the Indigenous population and the rest of the communities because they were using those funds that were supposed to improve the lives of the babies, right? It was 0 to 6. And The rest of the communities were doing really good stuff. I mean, they were buying diapers. They were helping people with some programming, and and most of it was really focused on a child food for the child, that kind of thing. But the indigenous population said, we can't create a brighter future for our babies unless we create a brighter future for all. The community in which those babies are born, that needs to be elevated and supported. And so, switching to this idea of, as we look at bringing our babies in, just even at that young age, what are the things that we can do and incorporate? Right now, we don't have to wait for a program. In fact, if we wait for a program, quite frankly, it won't get done. At least not in the best way. And I say that because, programs develop into models, and models have to be adhered to, and they're an economic engine. And then it becomes about something else. And that's just the way that this current system, economic system, works. But the miracle is we can change that, and we change it by doing it. Right? Let me say that again. We change it by doing it. So if you're having a baby in your family tomorrow, you get your friends together and you welcome that baby, sit her down on a chair, talk to the belly. You make it happen. So that's how you change it, And you know what? Even if you get it, there is no wrong. But even if you get it wrong, I guarantee that if you stay in spirit, you allow yourself to be guided, you take deep breaths, and you ask for and get advice when you need it, that you will never, ever, ever go wrong. Don't ever think that, oh, I'm not going to do this particular thing. I'm not going to, even though I know it would be healthy and it would be good and everything, but because I'm not going to do it because I might do it wrong. And so what happens? Nothing. Or I'm not going to do it because I'm going to wait for somebody else to do it. What happens? Nothing. So, I've made lots of mistakes in my life. I hope I'm not making one right now. But, and only time will tell that. But, these are the things that we can share and that we can, be able to start to do for each other, to talk about now bringing a child in. And there are things that you can do for yourself too. There are traditions where, you might make a decision that you provide that person a transfer of character. So the transfer of character would be similar to a godparent, or someone that takes on that role to guide the character of that young person. And that's not an easy thing to, that's a hard thing to contemplate as a parent, because you want to be able to guide. But sometimes you need help. And sometimes there are people in your life that you look at, and you say, that's the character that I want my child to emulate. That's the character. And usually that would be an older person. And I say that because characters, just like names, are unique. And so, those that are closest to their time of leaving are really good choices for doing a transfer of character, because that you want those attributes, those characteristics, to be carried on to contribute to that role that they played in the group of humanity. So while they go on to whatever other life form they'll be participating in.
Sure. Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, thank you so much, Shannon. I think that's all so potent and powerful. And I just remember being very mindful of how I touched my babies. You know, if there was a stressful situation going on, I made sure that I didn't touch them with that stress. And I made sure that, you know, like I cleared my energy before I touched them because I wanted to protect their innocence for as long as possible, you know. And I think that that idea of taking care of the mother and the father and the community so that the baby can thrive within the circle, within the family, within the community, that's really potent for right now for people to think about also. You know, our mission is love, care, and respect of all the children on earth. And what better way than to be actively involved in that, right? So that they can.
Yeah, and Heidi, you have to start it. You have to start it early like that because those people in your life, there's a purpose for them later on when there are other things that happen as they should. So when we get to adolescence, for example, it was a pretty accepted practice that you got rid of your kids for a few years, which is really, and I mean, and I don't mean that, I say that in a funny way, but the idea was that you were helping them and you were helping, you know, usually a relative that could lessen the conflict that needed to happen because you have to have separation. When you love your children so much and you think about those babies and there comes the, you're always going to love them, right? But if you had the same intensity of that love at 16 that you had at 6 months, you would never let them go. You would never let them go. You would never let them go. So you have to, there has to be that, but it happens quite naturally. And it doesn't have to be conflictual. And when we start talking about that age group, I'll talk more about that. But now the reason why it's hard to talk about one age group without talking about another age group, because as we grow as human beings, one blends into the other and reflects back to the first. And that's why everything that we can do for our babies is so critical because it will follow them the rest of their life.
I think that's the biggest mindful piece there, you know,
right.
It's like that 0 to 8 age is sponge action and whatever they're experiencing and whenever they're told and whenever they're feeling, whenever they're around, you know, and it's like, I know a lot.
It affects them physically. So, for example, we know now by the adverse experiences study that the more adverse or, you know, kind of negative experiences one has when they're a child, it can affect you all the way up into your 40s when your heart is beating, right? So, but
for those of you with young children, try not to worry.
Right. Well, you know, and here's the other part of that. As a parent, does that mean that, you know, that my experience or I would say I wasn't able to shield my child or my baby from a particular experience. So what you could doesn't mean that child necessarily has to have that outcome. What it means is be conscious of how you feel, both attend to keeping that negativity out of their lives for as long as you can, with building enough resiliency. And we know now that we actually can do that. We actually know what that's made up of. And it's made up of things like a caring adult, right? Made up of some of the things of reading or telling a story. It doesn't have to be reading, telling a story to a child. That interaction, that ability, that language development, all of, you know, how important that is. Why? Because that gives that child an opportunity to communicate. And we know now it begins pre-language. So that's why we're so important about the baby. It begins pre-language. So maybe that baby can't talk back to you. That baby hears everything that you say and knows every intent, as my friend Heidi was saying, of the touch, right? So, yay.
Yay. Okay, so we've covered birth, or no, womb, welcoming the womb, welcoming into the womb, welcoming into the journey of human existence, and as well as um, early babies. And Shannon and I will be back again to discuss the intricacies and weaving of young adolescents. Yeah. And
We still have childhood to go through.
yeah, we do have
So
childhood.
this is I was just talking today about baby, right? About that age group, but we'll go into childhood a little bit next time, and then we'll start into adolescence. Okay.
Oh gosh. Okay. All colorful. Yay. Okay. So thank you all.
We'll see how far we get next time. How about that?
Yeah, right. That sounds good. That sounds good. Okay, so thank you for joining us today. And this is Grandmother Shannon CrossBear, and I'm Heidi Little, and we are with International Children's Month, and happy International Children Love the Miracle 2020. And we'll see you again next time.
Go for the miracle.
Yay!